Here's a question that should be impossible to answer. How do you destroy a $186 million warship protected by the world's most advanced air defense systems, anchored 1,100 kilometers behind enemy lines, in waters Russia has considered untouchable for 200 years? The answer came at exactly 4:47 a.m. on October 3, 2025. A Russian Buyan-M class Corvette, armed with 8 nuclear-capable cruise missiles, defended by close-in weapon systems, protected by overlapping S-400 and Panzer air defense batteries, sat anchored in Lake Onega, the Republic of Karelia. The crew was on shore leave. The captain was asleep in his quarters. Russian admirals had personally assured him this was the safest position in the entire Navy. They were catastrophically wrong. What happened in the next 90 seconds didn't just sink one ship. It shattered a military doctrine that survived Napoleon, outlasted Hitler, and defined Russian power for over 2 centuries. This is the story of how Ukraine turned Russia's safest harbor into a death trap, and why every military strategist on Earth is studying what happened next. Let me take you back 92 minutes before the explosion. 03:15 hours. Commander Volkov, not his real name, but we'll use it, was reviewing exactly nothing in his cabin. No threat assessments, no readiness protocols, no defensive preparations. Why would he? Think about his logic for a moment. He's sitting in Lake Onega, at the heart of a 227-kilometer canal system that connects Russia's Arctic bases to the Baltic Fleet. Over 1,000 kilometers of Russian territory separate him from any Ukrainian launch position. Between him and Ukraine, multiple S-400 air defense rings around St. Petersburg, Panzer systems guarding the canal itself, overlapping radar networks, electronic warfare stations, fighter bases on 5-minute alert status. This wasn't just safe. This was Fortress Russia. The geographic equivalent of hiding inside a bank vault that's already inside another bank vault. So, Commander Volkov had authorized shore leave for 70% of his crew. The ship's AK-630 close-in weapon systems, 6-barreled rotary cannons capable of firing 5,000 rounds per minute, were in standby mode. Defense condition, minimal. 3 kilometers away in Petrozavodsk, the canal traffic controller was fighting to stay awake during his night shift. His only concern? Whether his second cup of coffee would stay warm until dawn. On his radar screen, routine overnight traffic. Lock sequences programmed for a Northern Fleet submarine convoy scheduled to transit from the White Sea. Everything nominal. Everything boring. Everything about to explode. But here's what neither the captain nor the traffic controller knew. While they saw safety and distance, Ukrainian intelligence saw something very different. They saw the perfect kill zone. The hunt began 3 days earlier with a mistake. A simple, fatal communications security error that would cost Russia $186 million. And I want you to pay attention to this, because it shows how modern warfare has changed forever. Ukrainian Hortitsia signal intelligence platforms, mobile listening stations hidden near the combat zone, monitor thousands of Russian military frequencies 24/7. Standard procedure. Background noise in the electromagnetic spectrum. But on September 30th, analysts noticed something bizarre. Black Sea Fleet command frequencies were transmitting from Russia's northwest, not from Sevastopol where they should be, not from Novorossiysk, from somewhere between St. Petersburg and the Arctic Ocean, over 2,800 kilometers from their assigned operational area. That's not how radio discipline works. Someone got sloppy, or scared. The signal triangulation pointed to one specific location, the White Sea-Baltic Canal corridor. Ukrainian intelligence asked the obvious question. What's a Black Sea Fleet asset doing 2,800 kilometers north? Only one answer made sense. They'd relocated a high-value target to what they thought was absolute safety. Time to find it. Ukraine's satellite analysts, using the same commercial imagery anyone can purchase, but interpreted by minds trained to hunt warships, began scanning every meter of that canal. They were looking for one specific silhouette. Compact, dangerous, armed with caliber cruise missiles that can carry nuclear warheads. Buyan-M class Corvette. Frame 2847 from an October 1st satellite pass showed it. A vessel matching exact dimensions anchored mid-lake. Far from civilian shipping lanes. Far from shore-based defenses. Sitting perfectly still. The Grad Corvette. 949 tons. 8 vertical launch cells loaded with Kaliber missiles. Worth more than most countries spend on defense in a year. The final confirmation came from a source Ukrainian military intelligence will never publicly identify. A ghost network operating inside Russia. Human assets who sent one devastating message: Grad Corvette, relocated from Black Sea Fleet. Captain believes position provides absolute security. Crew readiness degraded. Defense systems in standby mode. Now think about what that means. A $186 million strike platform, capable of launching nuclear weapons, sitting stationary in predictable waters, with its defenses lowered, because its commander confused distance with safety. Ukrainian military planners looked at that intelligence and saw a golden opportunity, but they also saw a problem. Conventional strike? Impossible. Lake Onega sits under the S-400 umbrella protecting St. Petersburg. Any subsonic cruise missile would be detected, tracked, and destroyed long before reaching the target. Ukrainian forces would need something different, something the Russians wouldn't see coming. Something that could fly 1,200 kilometers, carry enough explosive to kill a warship, and defeat multiple layers of air defense designed to stop exactly this kind of attack. Enter the weapon that would change everything. The Lyuty drone. Range: 1,200 kilometers. Payload: 73 kilograms of high explosive. But range and payload weren't what made it lethal. The guidance package was. 3 independent layers, each designed to defeat a specific Russian defense. Layer 1. Inertial navigation with digital terrain contour matching. The drone flies its entire profile without GPS, using preloaded elevation maps and onboard gyroscopes. Russian GPS jamming, which is intense and constant across this region. Layer 2. Multi-band GNSS receiver for backup positioning, resistant to electronic warfare. If one constellation is jammed, it switches to another. Layer 3. The killer feature. Electro-optical and infrared seeker head that activates during terminal approach. It doesn't track radar emissions or radio signals. It hunts thermal signatures and visual profiles stored in its memory. When it locks on, there's no warning, no launch detection alert, no time to react. But even this sophisticated hunter couldn't succeed alone. The mission plan was elegant in its simplicity. 2 Banshee electronic warfare drones would launch simultaneously with the Lyuty. Their job? Fly high, fly obvious, paint every Russian radar screen within 200 kilometers. Become the irresistible target. These weren't just decoys. Each Banshee carried active jamming pods that could detect Russian air defense radar frequencies and apply pinpoint electronic warfare, creating momentary blind spots where radars see nothing but static. The Banshees would fly several hundred meters higher than the Lyuty, on a more obvious approach vector. Russian air defense doctrine is simple. Engage the highest, fastest, most obvious threat first. While Panzer battery commanders focused on killing those 2 contacts, the real threat would ghost beneath their radar horizon. Flying low, flying quiet, carrying 73 kilograms of explosives toward the Grad's engine compartment. 0127 hours, October 3rd. Launch sequence initiated. 3 drones lifted off from an undisclosed base in northern Ukraine. Initial flight path: north-northeast, exploiting corridors over sparsely populated Russian oblasts with documented gaps in radar coverage. These routes had been mapped over months. Ukrainian intelligence knew which sectors had weak coverage, which radar stations were undermanned, which ones had maintenance issues. They flew these corridors like highways through enemy territory. 2 hours into the flight, first contact. A Russian Nebo-M long-range radar station in Tver Oblast caught a fleeting return. Faint, unidentified. The operator started to classify it. Then one of the Banshees detected the radar emission, calculated its frequency in milliseconds, and hit it with a focused jamming burst. The return on the Russian operator's screen dissolved into noise. He adjusted filters. Nothing. Probably atmospheric interference. He logged it as a ghost return and moved on. The formation kept flying. 0416 hours, 90 kilometers from target. A Panzer S-1 battery assigned to Lake Onega air defense detected 2 contacts inbound. Low altitude, slow speed, unknown aircraft in restricted airspace. The battery commander's training kicked in immediately. Rules of engagement, clear. He achieved radar lock on both Banshees. Missile status, ready. This is the critical moment where everything could collapse. If one Russian operator looks at his screen differently, if one radar technician notices the third, much lower contact hiding beneath the Banshees, Su-27 interceptors would scramble from Besovets Air Base within 90 seconds. The Lyuty would be intercepted and destroyed. The mission would fail, but the Panzer commander sees exactly what Ukraine wants him to see. 2 obvious threats, 2 locked targets. He never looks lower. The Lyuty, flying several kilometers behind and hundreds of meters below the Banshees, slips through the radar's lower detection lobe, invisible, unnoticed. 60 kilometers from Commander Volkov's sleeping quarters. Russian air defense networks across the region elevated to high alert. Forces repositioned to defend St. Petersburg's port facilities and refineries, exactly where Ukraine wanted them looking. 0444 hours. The Lyuty crossed the shoreline of Lake Onega. Electro-optical seeker, active. Infrared sensor, scanning. The drone's targeting computer began analyzing the thermal landscape below. Cool water, forested shoreline. Then, exactly where intelligence predicted, a distinct heat signature. Ship-sized, the Grad's engines were shut down, but residual heat from the power plant and generators created an unmistakable infrared bloom against the cold water. The targeting AI compared the thermal image against stored profiles. Confidence match, 97%. Visual confirmation overlay, Buyan-M class silhouette. Target authenticated. The Lyuty's engine throttled up for terminal dive. Its sound echoed across the lake, a distant mechanical scream in the pre-dawn darkness. By the time anyone heard it, it was already too late. 70-degree dive angle. Target, engine compartment. Structural weak point, minimal armor, maximum secondary damage potential. The 73-kilogram warhead struck at 0447 hours. It punched through the Corvette's deck plating like aluminum foil. The initial detonation ripped through the engine room, shredding turbines, generators, fuel lines, metal turning to shrapnel, systems failing simultaneously. Then the secondary explosions began. Ship's fuel tanks ignited. Ammunition storage began cooking off. Within 90 seconds, the $186 million Corvette was a floating inferno. On the bridge, the duty officer grabbed his radio with trembling hands. His transmission to Northern Fleet Command in St. Petersburg was pure terror. "We're under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. How is this possible?" Nobody answered him, because nobody had an answer. Commander Volkov's safe harbor became his coffin. Russia's untouchable refuge was burning. But what burned that morning on Lake Onega wasn't just steel and fuel. It was a belief system, an institutional doctrine that Russian military leadership has worshipped since the Tsars. For 200 years, Russia's ultimate defense was simple: geography. The idea that Russia's vast territory, 17 million square kilometers across 11 time zones, makes it unconquerable. That enemies exhaust themselves crossing impossible distances. That the homeland always remains safe behind thousands of kilometers of buffer territory. Napoleon's Grande Armée learned this in 1812. 600,000 men marched into Russia. Fewer than 100,000 staggered out, frozen and broken. Hitler's Wehrmacht learned it in 1941 to 43. 3 million soldiers reached Moscow's gates only to die in the Russian winter. Strategic depth. The doctrine became religious fact. Geography was armor. Distance was defense. The motherland was unreachable. Ukraine just proved that entire philosophy is dead. The Crimean Bridge attack cracked this doctrine. Drones hitting Moscow buildings fractured it further. But the Grad burning on Lake Onega? That's the final irreversible shattering. Because here's what you need to understand. This wasn't a border target. This wasn't even close to the combat zone. This was 1,100 kilometers deep into territory Russia considered absolutely secure. Modern long-range precision weapons don't care about distance. AI-assisted targeting doesn't care about geographic buffers. Autonomous systems don't get tired, don't get cold, don't need supply lines. The front line doesn't exist anymore. The battlefield is now everywhere simultaneously. From Ukrainian trenches to Siberian rail yards to Putin's protected inland waterways. Nothing is safe. Nowhere is beyond reach. And here's the paradox that's terrifying Russian generals right now. Russia has approximately 350 operational S-400 air defense systems. Sounds impressive until you do the math. What do they have to protect? Every major city, every military base, every nuclear facility, every rail junction, every port, every command center, every strategic waterway, spread across the largest country on Earth. The calculation is impossible. You cannot create overlapping air defense coverage across 17 million square kilometers. Physics doesn't allow it. Economics doesn't allow it. So Russian commanders face an impossible choice. Protect the front line where Ukrainian ground forces are advancing, or protect the interior where high-value strategic assets are located. Both options lead to disaster. Pull S-400 batteries from the front to defend inland targets. Ukrainian forces break through where air defense is weakened. Leave the interior undefended. More $186 million warships burn in lakes that were supposed to be safe. It's a death spiral with no escape. Strategic checkmate created by geography, working against them instead of for them. Russia's greatest historical advantage just became their fatal weakness. But the military consequences aren't even the most dangerous part of this attack. There's a second shockwave spreading through Russia right now, and it's hitting exactly where Putin is most vulnerable. Look at the map again. Lake Onega is practically in St. Petersburg's backyard, the city where Putin rose to power, where Russia's ruling class has their roots. Their summer dakas are on these shores. Their children sail these waters. For 3 years, the war has been someone else's problem. Something happening far away. Something watched on television from comfortable Moscow apartments. The oligarchs, the decision-makers, the wealthy political class keeping Putin in power, they've had an implicit deal. Remain loyal to the regime and you stay safe. Your money stays protected. Your families stay comfortable. The war stays far away. That deal just got shredded. If they're not safe there, they're not safe anywhere. The war isn't on television anymore. It's knocking on their doors. The illusion that wealth and loyalty can purchase security from consequences? Dead. Panic is spreading through encrypted chat groups and private phone calls right now. If Ukrainian drones can hit Lake Onega, what stops them from hitting the yacht clubs on the Neva River? The private schools in St. Petersburg? The luxury estates in Karelia? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This is the moment when Russia's elite realizes they're not insulated from the war's consequences. And that realization is more dangerous to Putin than any military defeat. Because when the people keeping you in power stop feeling safe, they start looking for exits. So what really happened on Lake Onega on October 3, 2025? Ukraine destroyed a $186 million Corvette, yes. But more importantly, they killed a 200-year-old doctrine. They shattered an illusion of safety. And they put Russian military leadership in an impossible strategic position, where every choice leads to disaster. But here's why this matters beyond just Ukraine and Russia. We're watching the fundamental rules of warfare being rewritten in real time. The idea that geographic distance provides security? Obsolete. The concept of safe rear areas? Dead. The assumption that small nations can't strike deep into larger adversaries? Shattered. Every military on Earth is studying this attack right now. Learning, adapting, understanding that the next war won't be fought along borders. It'll be fought everywhere simultaneously. And the nation that masters long-range precision autonomous systems first will have an advantage that geography can't counter. Now I want to hear from you. Put yourself in Commander Volkov's position for a moment. You're told by your superiors that you're in the safest position in the entire Russian Navy, 1,100 kilometers from the front, protected by multiple air defense layers. Do you trust that assessment, or do you question why a high-value asset is sitting exposed in predictable waters? What would you have done differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more untold stories of modern warfare where the impossible becomes reality, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened on Lake Onega isn't an isolated incident. It's the future of conflict. And next time, we're diving deep into how Ukraine is building a drone navy that's rewriting naval warfare. The story of how a country with almost no traditional navy is systematically dismantling one of the world's largest fleets. From sea surface drones that hunt billion-dollar warships to underwater autonomous systems that can strike from depths Russian sonar can't detect. The technologies, the tactics, and the strategic implications that have admirals in every navy losing sleep. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay curious. And remember, in modern warfare, nowhere is as safe as you think.